now, then you can have anyway. Judah, welcome back.
Oh, it's good to be back, Tesh.
Good to have you back to another Progress Pure podcast.
I think that'll be the last time you do that.
I think so. It's getting old anyway. I keep doing it with that American accent. It was cute the first time and now it's just old.
You're getting ready for New York, yeah?
Yeah. I'm trying to.
It's going to be a while though till that happens, right?
I am going to move. It's probably going to be at the end of spring, beginning of summer.
Okay, good. So I got a little bit more FaceTime with Tesh before you go.
A little bit more FaceTime with Tesh.
Love it.
Before I go. Can you just scooch in a little bit more towards me? Slightly.
So the fans can see me.
Yeah, I'm always in such different locations when I do these that people must be like, are you homeless?
I think kind of the opposite.
Yeah, no, I know. It's totally fair. No, I'm in a really nice bedroom right now. It's not my bedroom, but anyway, I'm going to leave that up to mystery as to guessing whose bedroom it is. So, debate series, social media. I am really excited to do this because it is such a debate me topic that it seems so obvious that maybe people don't even really talk about it nowadays.
Mm-hmm. I think it's one of those things because it's so embedded in people's lives. Everybody has an opinion. And I think the spectrum of opinions change so much based on what mood you're in that day or, what you see on social media. So you can go from one moment absolutely loving it and mindlessly scrolling to the second, another day where you're like, I'm deleting everything and I'm completely getting off this.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've flitted between so many times.
Yeah, people do have that. It's like a very extreme thing where people will, I think, spend too much time on it and then they're like, I have to get rid of this, I'm doing it, goodbye, and then they delete all the apps and they say they're going through a social media cleanse. And even that word cleanse is very social media is dirty.
Well, the scariest thing is, when you ever see the, screen time and it shows you how much time you've used on specific apps.
Yeah.
And people, you literally spend 3, 4, 5 hours, way longer than you would do any other task.
Yeah.
And when you ask them, at the end of the day, well, what have you done today? They wouldn't say, I've been on Instagram, but the timing doesn't lie.
Yeah.
It's literally big blocks of it. And, it's crazy to think how easy it can swallow up all of your time and attention.
Yeah. What is because I think we get that notification every Monday morning or every Monday, it's weekly reports from Apple. What's your average screen time?
Oh, no, I don't do that. I think it'd be way too depressing. But I have checked in the past and because I use my phone for work,
here we go. That's what everyone says when they don't want to seem like a social media nerd. They go, because I'm on
excuse.
WhatsApp a lot of the time for work calls.
What I will say is it can be anywhere from, an hour to 4 hours sometimes.
That's not bad.
I know that's the low end of it.
Yeah.
And how scary is it that 4 hours can still be considered not that much?
Yeah.
I see some people, especially younger kids that are, using it 6, 7, 8, 9 hours. And it's you're not even awake for much longer than that. So how can you be on it the whole time? What I would say is the way I look at, how kids and younger generations use it, it's a lot more augmenting their, day-to-day life, where it's almost a second reaction just to have your phone in your hand and be able to flick on and off it, for a few seconds, rather than, what we would maybe do, which is you go on, you have a bit of a scroll, and then you put it away and you do something else.
Yeah. And a lot of the research I was doing, and we'll talk about this more, I want to talk more about the history of social media a bit, but there are a lot of studies saying that now teens, instead of going to parties, which we would potentially do and then have a scroll in between on the way, even though that's absolutely not to say that all of us do that a lot of kids will just go to each other's houses and they'll just do social media as the thing. They'll just be on Instagram with each other, or they'll just
That's
be on.
So sad.
It is, kind of. But then what I don't want to do with the way that we have this conversation, because I think that when I talk to my friends about social media, I'm like, God, it's so sad. They don't have a childhood, all of this shit. But instead of looking back on it so nostalgic, our childhood was so much better, I think maybe it's just different.
I think absolutely it's different, and it depends what you value and it depends how you choose to spend your time. I'm very much somebody who uses social media for a variety of different ways and reasons, and I'm not at all opposed to it. I think there's so much good that it does, and I think it connects people in such a unique way that generations before us weren't fortunate to have. So I'm sure we'll get into this during the podcast, but it's, absolutely, I'm not saying it's the doom and gloom and the worst thing that's ever happened to society. But, look, it's important to recognize where it is harmful. And I think that's something that you've said you want to discuss as well, that, isn't it crazy that you can have something that makes people feel isolated even when they're in a room full of their best friends?
That's really crazy. We'll get into that more. Some things that I do want to talk about in terms of like history of social media, some countries that have banned it, just to like set up the scene a little bit more. So I've got, so apparently this is according to the BBC, 3 billion people, which is around 40% of the world's population, use online social media. We're spending an average of 2 hours every day sharing, liking, tweeting, and updating on these platforms, which isn't much, especially in comparison to like what I do and what some of my friends do. This breaks down to around 500,000 tweets and Snapchat photos shared every minute. This article was written, I think, in 2019.
So it'll be even more now.
Maybe, I don't know if maybe like Snapchat people potentially use less now and people might use other social media platforms. But yeah, it's a lot of people doing a lot of stuff on social media. There are 10 countries that have banned social media. So North Korea, Eritrea, is that how I pronounce it?
Yeah, so Eritrea is next to Ethiopia. It's just, I think, northeast. So it's above Ethiopia and, what's it, Somalia?
Do you do geography?
Not even. I just know stuff. I'll pat myself on the back.
That's
there.
pretty good. How do you know that?
So in 2015, I spent about 3 months in Ethiopia working for an NGO.
Oh my god, wow. This is such a like, Judah's looking for a girlfriend, you're a good person
Honestly,
promo.
like, listen, if ever there was a platform for me to big myself up, you know, I'm a man of the world, I travel, I do charity.
I know where Eritrea is.
I posted it all on social media as well.
Eritrea.
Eritrea,
cool. Okay, so Eritrea have banned it, North Korea have banned it, China have obviously banned, well, not obviously, but they've banned a lot of social media. They've
Western social media, right?
Yeah, they've blocked Google, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, as well as thousands of other overseas websites, including the New York Times and Chinese Wikipedia. They do have social media platforms like WeChat, but they've banned most Western ones. Then you've also got Saudi Arabia, Iran, Bangladesh, Syria, Tunisia, Vietnam, which has a communist government, which I actually wasn't aware of.
No.
And Myanmar. And so originally, the kind of like classic social media pages that I think we know, you've got like Facebook, MySpace, Friendster, and they all came about between 2002 to 2004. And since then, there's kind of been a timeline of how social media, like when it first kicked off, was arguably just for connecting each other, which I think a lot of people in the beginning thought this is going to be a really good thing for democracy, like connecting each other, sharing ideas, people having a platform, and being able to like reconnect those connections. But then those social media platforms have essentially released some features to make the experience better for users, or potentially to just keep people on the platforms for a longer period of time, or to make the experience easier. Like I said, like, so for example, when in Twitter 2006, it was basically, when it launched, it was basically just a timeline of tweets consisting of 140 characters. Facebook in 2006, they launched the news feed to kind of mimic Twitter. Facebook in 2009 launched the like button, and that was the first time where there was a public metric for the popularity of content. And then there was an algorithm created that determined what posts a user would see based on predicted engagement. And then this turned that stream of curated content into a this turned content into a curated stream. This flattened the hierarchy of credibility. Yeah, so I think when they released those kinds of algorithm, it doesn't matter what level of credibility your account is, whether you're the New York Times or whether you're a fake news account that's just generating really eye-catching, emotive headlines. Those things would shoot to the top of the feed rather than it just being a timeline.
Just one thing on that, I think it's interesting to mention, I might be wrong with this, but even though I think Facebook was the first people to do the whole, like button and allow you to validate and, measure popularity, as you just said, I think there were other ways that could have been done that were less tied to the individual. So, for example, news outlets online that had comment sections or public chat rooms that have, since been kind of blacklisted and shouted down, things like 4chan and Reddit. I think there were these online billboard type communities. I think the key difference is a lot of these were either anonymous or people would use aliases and taglines, whereas Facebook was the first time that people were associating themselves with their opinions very publicly and then asking other people to validate, agree with that, or engage with it.
Potentially, yeah, but I think also when Facebook started, there were a lot of people who created like anonymous accounts, and in those, you're right, there were like forums, and when we were younger, I remember there were accounts like Ask FM, but those were specifically for people who wanted to leave anonymous comments about people, which tended just to be horrible anyway.
I remember that. That was like the worst website in the world.
Yeah.
So much bullying.
There was so much bullying on that, partly because it was all anonymous, but yeah, a lot of Facebook you don't have to be anonymous for. A lot of it, people do create fake anonymous accounts. And then going on from that, Twitter 2009, they added the retweet button. So that was really interesting because adding the retweet button that's arguably them doing it because they want to make the process easier for their users. Like instead of you copying and pasting something that you like, you can just retweet. However, the danger with that, which is what we'll talk about in a bit, is like people then mindlessly can do it. I mean, obviously it's less work for them to have to copy, paste, retweet, but doing that encourages this behavior of mindlessly sharing things that maybe you haven't really even thought about.
Like allowing you to take these statements that other people have made and repurpose them as your own thoughts, rather than going out of your way to read something, engage with it, and then kind of tweak it to your own words.
And exactly, and also it diminishes any motivation for you to understand the context. Like unless you really go out of your way to read that and go, I'm going to understand who this person is and in what context they're saying this before I retweet it. So a lot of people just go ahead and do that, not know the context, and then just move on with their day because it's just slightly easier.
Yeah.
Then in Facebook 2012, they released the share button. And then in 2012 to 2013, a lot of the reading I was doing, they commented, and that was the year before the whole Russia scandal, or of the, I need to double check this, of Russian, there's like Russian accounts creating fake, wait, let me find this. I don't want to get this wrong. In 2014, that was when Russia's Internet Research Agency began mobilizing its network of fake accounts across every social media platform in order to inflame partisan divisions and advance Russian goals. That was from an article from The Atlantic. But also the year before that, in 2013 or 2012, was the year that over 50% of the American population suddenly had smartphones. And so I think that like marked a kind of pivotal step in, okay, this is social media, smartphones is like dominating or having a significant impact in the way humans are now living their lives. So that's kind of the timeline of things that I found. And obviously that's only talking about like Facebook and Twitter and like the major platforms. But the things that I wanted to talk about with you is that when I talk about social media or think about social media with my friends, it's always in this context of it's a bad thing.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I guess why do we think that?
So I think the reason that we think it's a bad thing is firstly because of how much time we spend on it. And I think it's not necessarily that social media in of itself is bad, but dominating our lives, that's when social media becomes negative, because there are so many other rich ways to spend our time and so many things that require a lot more attention and thought and concentration. So whether it's, reading a book or going for a walk or playing music or something else, it's a lot more fulfilling to do other activities. But social media has such an addictive tendency that I think the frustration for people comes from not them using it, but them wishing they were doing other things more. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, but I'm just like, why is going outside or reading a book, why is that more fulfilling than being on social media? Because I'm sure there are people who would say, I feel really fulfilled potentially after, and you're right, there are loads of studies that show that the more time you spend on social media, the less happy that you are. But I'm trying to figure out like, why is that? Why do we go on social media and feel unfulfilled?
So one of the things that I've really started to think about recently is the way that social media was set up versus the way that it's being used. So if you think about originally when it was founded, like Facebook, for example, Facebook was created as a way for people who are friends and who are, who know each other in the real world to be more in tune with what their friends are doing and be able to have a better insight into other people's lives. It's a place for, parents or adults to reconnect with people that they might have been at school with and be able to stay in people's lives in a much more easy and involved way. Now, that I think is a really fantastic thing, and there's so much benefit in being able to stay up to date with the people that you really care about and be able to comments on the things that they're doing. If you see somebody's had a kid and you want to say congratulations, or they've gone on holiday, and, it's like, wow, what an amazing, whatever.
Yeah, sunset.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
But the difference between how it was intended and how it's used, especially for our generation. So I still, I'm going to be the guy who says I still remember life before social media. But
I do. I remember life before it.
So I remember, I think I got Facebook in year 7. So I must have been about, 11 or 12 years old. And because we got it at a time where we were growing up, childhood is naturally a time where you're meeting so many people and your social network is expanding in real life. And the way social media is set up, it's kind of like a video game where you're rewarded with more likes and bigger numbers of friends, and you kind of collect friends as if it was coins or something on a video game.
Yeah.
And I think that is one of the challenges and one of the negative things about it, how it's manifested compared to how it was intended to be used, is that it kind of creates this weird, obsessive virtual game that people play.
Yeah, because when we first got Facebook, you couldn't. The like button wasn't around. I'm pretty sure when I had Facebook, the like button didn't exist.
I think it can't have done.
No, yeah, because they launched the like button in 2009, and I definitely had Facebook before then. Mm-hmm. And I remember having what you just said of like how many friends, like your friends on Facebook, that being a thing, and it just became like an online popularity contest where suddenly it wasn't. And also at that age, it's difficult to even perceive this notion of judging somebody, or like not judging somebody but understanding someone and who they authentically are based on like who their characters are, because you're so young at that age. You just judge people on like, oh, I like the color of your hair tie, or how much fun they are. But it's so odd that since that age, like since the time of how many Facebook friends do I have, and in comparing yourself to other people to judge how popular you are, you automatically start becoming this like PR person of yourself without even realizing it at such a young age.
Mm-hmm. Well, one of the crazy things about social media is that it allows you to essentially create a virtual version of yourself. So what is the Molly Teshuva that you aspire to be?
Yeah.
And then you craft that image online.
Yeah.
And then you hold yourself to that standard, when actually, the real you exists in the real world. The person that you see online, the progress pure, if you will, it's like, that's not real. That's a crafted version of you presenting your best self and the ideas that you have about what's important. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I think it's important for people to recognize that is separate from who people are in real life.
Yeah, but maybe that is real. Like you saying it's not real, maybe that is the only real version of maybe that is progress pure. Like Molly might not be progress pure, like even not just progress pure, but like I don't have a personal Instagram account. I used to have Molly Teshuva, but that version of Molly Teshuva that I put myself online, that's not exactly who I am. And so that could still be real. Like that's just the online version of myself. Like, is there a real like if you were to say, okay, I'm going to handle your Molly Teshuva Instagram account, yeah, it would look different, but it would probably be like your version of me, which is probably not even real anyway.
That's really interesting, because that made me think actually about the way I use social media. And if we think about Instagram for a second, so I have 3 accounts that are all for different aspects of my personality, or for me to express and explore different interests that I have.
Yeah,
so
one for drug dealing. Joking.
So I've got my personal account, Sal Paradise, which is named after a really niche character in a book that I love.
Okay.
Then I've got my vegan one, which we talked about, a few podcasts ago, and I have my film photography one. And the vegan one and the film photography one, I don't put any pictures of myself on, because that's not what it's about. But what you said about, this is the real progress pure, I suppose social media, the cool thing about it is it allows you to unashamedly and unfilteredly follow and explore one aspect of yourself in a very concentrated way.
Yeah, it's just an online version of you. I think that a lot of people say, it's just so interesting. Like, I remember when I first started doing Progress Pure in 2014, and it was very like, this is my fitness lifestyle, this is what's perfect. And even sometimes in the captions I would say like, I'm not having a great day or whatever. I was striving to be really positive. And then now, because of that, as a reaction to that, there has been this wave of this is who I really am. Like, I'm going to show how many tummy rolls I have. I have nothing against that. People can relate to that. It is real, and it is a breath of fresh air, especially in that saturated world of my life is so perfect and I have abs all the time. I get it. But then again, it is a bit like, I don't think, I think people are more aware of the fact that, and maybe I'm only saying this now with this kind of like rose tinted perspective of, because we have come so far in putting out content that is way more real. But I think people are way more aware of like, that this is a filtered version of your life, and no one is saying that you do this shit all the time. But then I guess, I don't know, some people all the time are posting photos of them in like Dubai and like really nice holidays, and I'm sure I've seen accounts like that of my friends, and I know that that's not really how they live their life, and they're also very open and being like, that's not, by the way, who I am and the life that I live, but they like giving people the impression that that is what they do all the time.
Well, it's like everybody's playing a character, right? And it's like, okay, if I could be anybody, who would I be? And now you have the ability to be that person, you have the ability to let other people think you are. But a question for you that I have is, how do you think your perception of social media changed since Progress Pure became such a phenomenon? Because the average
such a phenomenon, wow.
Yeah,
yeah.
Like, well, you know
I don't know if I
right?
call it such a phenomenon, but yeah, it picked up, it did well, yeah.
Like, I guess the point I want to make is that the average person, the way that they use social media is very much for them and their immediate group of friends and the people that they know. But for you, having such a big following, first of all, it's a lot of responsibility, one might argue. But also, it's a very different way that people use social media, because absolutely, we've spoken, loads of times about how there are subcultures and there are communities of people that have that kind of following and know each other in real life and connect through that. But yeah, it would just be interesting to know, has the way that you see these kinds of platforms shifted since it's become more than just your immediate group of friends?
Yes, I think so. So the main thing I would have to say, like from my experience from it, has been so good, and also not so bad, but so good and so
so nice.
So nice. Me and Judah have this private joke about something being so nice. No, so it has been, Progress Pure was an amazing thing. Like, I would have never ever been able to. The reason why I started it is because I wanted to find an online community where I could connect with people who I didn't feel like were available in my real life. So that is why I started it. And so you could argue that I took really full advantage of the benefits that social media has to offer. Like, I organized an event in New York. I got to chat with people, fitness people who were in New York who came, and we brought something that was online to something in real life, and getting to chat with thousands of people that live in all different parts of the world. The fact that I can do this podcast and like people want to listen to it because of Progress Pure is an amazing thing. There is something with social media though, that if you don't, I think it's one of those things that you have to constantly like monitor yourself. Like you said, that the initial foundations of social media is not a toxic or a bad thing, but sometimes what happens on it and can develop into that without you even recognizing. So the biggest turning point for me with social media in a negative aspect was I had, like brand ambassador partnerships, and I was posting photos that were supposed to be happy and positive because that was in line with the brand message. That doesn't really have anything specific to do with social media. That's just a company wanting to be associated with good vibes and like a positive looking person. Nothing new. It's kind of modeling in a way. Didn't mean to spit on you there.
Splash zone.
And posting that, and then the thing for me, which I realized that, okay, I need to get out of this hole, like I've really sucked myself in, was I felt like I was on holiday with my ex-boyfriend, and I was like biting my finger all the time in this like really bad way. Like it was a stress thing and I didn't even notice it. And I would post a photo of myself and then log out because I couldn't deal with the feed. The stress of constantly comparing myself to not what other people look like, but to other successful influencers and how much engagement they were getting was really affecting me and making me feel shit about myself as a person, of like, why can't I achieve that? So I would just log out and not think about it. And he actually stopped me and was like, you need to think about what you're doing. Like, you're literally like gnawing off your hand and logging out every time. Like, you don't have to do this. And I remember that being a massive moment for me where I was like, oh my God, I don't have to do this. And I think when you get so entrenched in social media and it becomes your world, and it did become my world, that you feel like, in a weird way, like Stockholm Syndrome, you're like, I can't leave.
But you reclaimed the platform though. That's something that I really admired about you know, one of the things that we spoke about early on, because like for the listeners, so Molly and I used to walk to uni together sometimes, and I remember that I would have to like be on the meadows at university, and she'd be like, okay, I've got my Fitbit or I've got my whatever, you need to take a few pictures of me. And we started working out together like 2014. So I remember like that whole phase. And then there was a point where you just stopped it and you said, you know what, this isn't who I am anymore. And this was never something that I was doing as a career. It was just something that I was into at some point.
Yeah.
But what was the process going through your mind where you decided, actually, I do have this asset and I do have this amazing platform to be able to, you know, really do something cool that made you want to revisit Progress Pure, but with more of your kind of authentic passions as they were right now, rather than clinging on to a subculture that you were part of when you were 18 to 22?
There are so many interesting factors that come into play to this. I'm really happy you asked about this because it is something which I find really interesting to talk about and like really liberating at the same time. So I think there are a few things. One is lockdown. One is other people who inspire me. And I think as well, the original journey of Progress Pure, and like to go into more detail of those things, like, during lockdown, I deleted Molly Teshuva Instagram because I was like, I don't want to be spending my time on this because I know I'm going to be sucked in. So I spent way more time listening to comedians who I love online, like Theo Von, like, was Crystalia, but now he's like cancelled because he is talked to like underage girls. But anyway, Bobby Lee, Joe Rogan. That was
a different pod, wasn't it? Did we do that one?
No.
Did we do cancel culture?
Oh, yeah, we did. Spoke about Crystalia. Joe Rogan, like I was listening to them and I was just like, how freaking cool. Like these guys make a living out of just chatting shit or like just hanging out and like having a fun time. Like that would be so cool. And then I thought to myself, like, I would really love to do that. And then I was like, well, how do I do that? And I think that the biggest takeaway that I had from Progress Pure was that social media can be terrifying because people are instant, they react to you, they can cancel you, they judge you, you know, you're putting yourself out there to be liked and not liked, so aka disliked. And because I had gone through that really difficult process when I initially first started posting photos of myself in Progress Pure, I had gone through that like mental turmoil of people are going to judge me and I just have to be like, fuck it, because this is my life and I'm just going to live it the way I want to live it. And because I had gone through that, the idea of going back on Progress on that account and working towards a career that I think will be really cool is scary on one level because it's like, oh, people can judge me. But I did have that like chutzpah to just be like, I've done this, I don't care, like what have I got to lose?
Because you built it yourself and I think it's such an impressive thing.
Thank you.
It's interesting though because that compared to how the average person uses social media, I think what you just said about Joe Rogan and that crowd of, you know, all of those like Bert Kreischer, the people that literally for a living go on each other's podcasts, they chat, they, you know, they discuss whatever they want, they laugh, they joke around, fantastic. And one of the powerful things of social media is it's given voices to people all over the world in a way that they never had before. Yeah. Unfortunately, not everybody has interesting things to say. Like, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
You know, it's fantastic that you've been able to create a subculture and be able to have such a big listenership and have people who are genuinely interested in the topics that you're interested in and want to, you know, be a part of those conversations and part of that journey as you explore it. But you just get so much crap online because so many people are there bashing away at the keyboard saying like mind-numbingly dull stuff.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that used to crack me up, I can't remember which meme it was that I saw, but it was something like Neil Armstrong goes to the moon and takes 6 photos, and then the girls on a Hindu go to the bathroom and take 45 photos. It's like, you know what I mean? It's like one of the challenges with social media that I see is it's such a powerful tool. You know, it's incredibly valuable in giving people that voice, giving people that platform, allowing people to connect with people all over the world and feel listened to, feel like they can take part in that conversation. The challenge is that if you don't have anything interesting to say, it can just bring out the worst narcissism in people. And it's not even something that is, you know, just one group of people. I think everyone has a little bit of narcissism in them. And I don't think it's a bad thing to love yourself and to want to share with other people what you're doing. I think it's incredibly important to value how you are and how you're living and want to let other people that are interested in you and close to you into that existence. But, you know, the downside is that unfortunately it can be incredibly addictive. It goes back to what you were saying about the like button, that becomes people's primary way of getting validation, especially when they don't know how to seek it out or don't know to have those conversations and to be able to connect with people in real life in the physical world. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but this is the thing, like, I think that what you said about it's great because some people have an amazing platform and it's created these subcultures and communities that people can connect and share with. And just because people might find what I say interesting, someone else might think that what I'm saying isn't interesting. Do you know what I mean? So it's not like you can be someone who creates good content or you can be someone who doesn't. I think it's great that everybody has the opportunity now to have a voice in a way. But then again, it's like, is it? Should everyone have a voice? Because like you said with the like button, it's so easy to just jabber on about random pointless shit and then share it and then just putting it out into the ether. And then not just the fact that you're putting it out there and maybe it's fueling that narcissist inside of you, which by the way, I've totally done that. And even in terms of like filters and like being like, I look nice, and like putting up a photo that doesn't look like me and me just fueling into that. But then there's also this kind of bad, or maybe not bad, but something we have to think about. Like the way that we ingest that kind of information now is that I'll be on the feed and there'll just be random cat videos coming up or someone just chatting nonsense, and I just sit there and I watch it because it's crazy. It's the light, it's the colours.
It hypnotizes you.
It's hypnotizing.
Like, you know when you're on the tube or you're on the train or whatever, and it's scroll, scroll, because you're getting blasted with so much information that it's satiating like the need in your brain to have that external stimuli and to be able to feel, connected, stimulated, like you've got something going on, but actually what you're consuming is meaningless. But something we were talking about before we started recording, which I find, a really cool concept, is that, look, social media is fantastic to procrastinate on. It is an echo chamber, and the algorithms are created in such a way that if you're into something, it will give you more of that. So if Facebook knows that Molly Teshuva likes cat videos, you're going to get hundreds of that all day, every day. But what if we could go back and we could reclaim the stuff that our social media is showing us? And this is what I was talking about with why I have different accounts for Instagram, for example. So with my film Instagram account, I only look at other film photographers and their work. I don't follow any of my friends. I really try to keep it specific to one thing that I'm interested in. And the recommendations that I get are all stuff to do with that. It's the same with my vegan account. It's like everything that it's showing me is all vegan recipes or vegan workout tips or, good mental health stuff. And it's like, that's a really cool thing that everybody has the ability to do, is to recalibrate their social media in such a way that, look, let's be honest, we're not going to cut our 2 hours of scrolling time anytime soon. But if I am going to be on my phone and if I am going to be scrolling when I've got a spare 5 minutes, or, I wake up and I'm like, fuck, what am I going to do to, distract my mind for a little bit, scroll. At least I'm seeing stuff that I want to see and stuff that I value, rather than stuff that, some anonymous algorithm thinks that I want to see because I've watched a video one time or a few times.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's nice. That's definitely a step above going on your feed and just seeing photos of like really hot girls and whatever, or like hot dudes and like comparing yourself to them. But then again, is that better than, and maybe they're not comparable at all, but you waking up and going, I'm kind of bored, and instead of going on a feed that you're going to be glued into, you just go, I'm kind of bored, I'm going to pick up a book on something that I might not be something you already have an interest in. Like, it might be better to not even have that as an option, so that you can be like, I'm going to read this random book, Roald Dahl, like short story, and that will spark more of a creative process and be more fulfilling than scroll. Even
Absolutely.
If it's stuff you like looking at.
So I think the two things are separate activities, because absolutely fantastic to expose yourself to new things and new ideas, and picking up a book and getting stuck into it for a bit, I think is one of the best things people can do, but it takes a lot more concentration. What I'm talking about is using social media in such a way that if you're waiting for the bus and you know that you've got 5 minutes, and you know that because we're an ADHD generation, we don't have the capacity to sit and be bored. So if you have to pick your phone up, open Instagram and do something, it's at least something that's going to bring you a little bit of value or will help you to learn something, rather than just cat videos. But
maybe that's the problem. Like you saying, we're an ADHD generation where we don't have the 5 minutes where we can just sit there bored. Like maybe that is like such a root of the problem, and we need to go back to just being like, I'm bored, I'm not going to get my phone out, I'm just going to like listen to the noises and wait for my bus and maybe have eye contact with the person there. Do you know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. Look, I don't know what the answer is, because I think it's very difficult to change human nature now.
Yeah.
And I think regardless of what we individually aspire to do and to be and to spend our time doing, I think there is always going to be a big part of the population that are instinctually going to pick up their phone and have a scroll. And again, I'm not saying everybody should do this or people need to change that. I'm not trying to instruct anybody to do anything differently. I'm just playing around with ideas about how these things can be recaptured and reclaimed in more of a positive way. Because I'm such a big advocate for social media. Like, I think there are so many great things that it's done. So you talked about the Progress Pure subculture and that community you were able to tap into. There's so many fantastic communities around the world, and they're both local ones, they're, international ones. So, for example, there's, something like Concerned Parents of Crouch End, I think, which is like, it cracks me up. And it's basically...
There's Hampstead mums as well.
It's Hampstead mums. It's like people that are, this is what's going on, or there's a good offer in this, the store or whatever. So it's a way to bring the people around you closer together and to make you feel a little bit more connected.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, you've then got, say, I don't know, like Grandma's Sewing Society around the world, where you've got people that are like knitting sweaters and stuff and posting their pictures, and you've got one old lady in New Zealand and you've got another one down the road in, Belsize Park. It's like...
Totally. That's lovely, especially for old people to feel connected, especially when they're not so physical and they can't necessarily go outside and like drop a hat or whatever. But then again, like, you're kind of creating, and this sounds dramatic, but like a police state. Like, I know people now who, when they go out, like specifically if people are filming, they won't act how they want to act, or they'll say, can you put your phone away, because they don't feel like they can behave in the way they want to behave because of things like Instagram stories or things are recorded. And I think that like we don't have as much independence or freedom arguably as like our parents had, because they didn't have to worry about that. Like, they didn't have to worry about like going out and getting wasted, or even potentially like saying something. Now social media has created this kind of environment of people who just take like the moral high ground the whole time and scrutinize every word. And we do live in this society that, like, yeah, it's lovely for Jane the grandma who lives at Belsize Park who's knitting or whatever, but like I have to, and everyone has to really think about what they're saying, which is good on a certain level, because you should think about what you're saying and words are important. But the fact that you have to stress, like, I read something somewhere that was talking about how like one of the biggest, we talked about this in the cancel culture pod, one of the biggest stress factors for kids is that they're going to say something and be cancelled by their friends. And a lot of the time that's because people do want to be seen as like the good person on social media.
Yeah. Well, that's why every time I've come onto your podcast, like, I always caveat and say, like, first of all, I don't really know anything about what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And, second of all, it's just my opinion and, I might get it wrong. So, like, don't cancel me. But also like, I don't really care.
Yeah.
But I get that that's such a cause of anxiety. And this is why I think it would be terrible to be famous these days, because all of the benefits of being somebody who was well known in the past, where you'd be on TV and then you'd be out and about and maybe you'd have a crowd of people coming up for your autograph. But there wasn't the scrutiny and there wasn't the granular level of analysis into everything that you do that people are subjected to now. And what ends up happening with social media, one of the negatives that I do see is that it allows other people that don't hold themselves to a ridiculously high standard to hold strangers and to hold people they don't know to an unreachable standard, where they're expected to be perfect all the time, to have had completely perfect pasts and to have never stepped out of line, to have never said something wrong ever. Because it's not just what they're saying right now. We're essentially documenting everything, and opinions change. Like, for example, let me think of an example off the top of my head. Is so in Leeds, one of Leeds' biggest, biggest public embarrassments. So Jimmy Savile, the radio presenter. So he was loved in Leeds. Like, I remember there was pictures of him with people I know. He used to eat at this restaurant that was really popular in the community, and he would always be invited onto radio shows and like charity dues, and people would be posing for their pictures. And imagine somebody like that when it then comes to light all of the horrendous things that they've done. He
was a paedophile.
Yeah, not good.
Spoiler alert.
Like, all of the horrendous stuff, but you've still got people that are, in pictures with him and things like that, and that's documented. And it's the same. That's obviously a very extreme example, but public opinion changes on things, and even though public opinion shifts, the opinions that you might have had or you might have expressed at one time are concrete and they're there without any context. So it's very easy for us to judge people, especially people's past selves, with the critical lens of today, when in reality it's just so unreasonable to hold people to the standards that we've developed now, especially when opinion is so fast changing.
Yeah.
Like that's what I see as one of the main challenges. And I guess what you were saying about, kids' biggest fears being cancelled is that it's not just if you step out of line now, it's that you have to be so squeaky clean and so considered, and you have to curate yourself so carefully, because who knows what's going to happen in 10 years' time. Who knows if somebody's going to listen back to one of the podcasts we've recorded at some point. I'm very much delusions of grandeur, thinking that people are going to care what I'm saying in 10 years' time. But, who knows if something that we've discussed isn't going to be a really hot point of contention, and people are going to go back and say, oh my God, Molly and David were talking about this. How can you have such terrible views?
Yeah.
And, it's problematic.
It is. It's problematic. And I do definitely agree that there are for sure pros to social media, mostly the communities and reaching out with people. But like how I just mentioned before of talking about how kids nowadays, this was super, super interesting, talking about, let me see, I think it was one to do with dating. Okay, so apparently today's teenagers are much less likely to date. 56% of high school seniors in 2015 went out on dates. But however, in comparison for boomers and Gen Xers, the number was about 85%.
Which are we?
We're on the cusp of Gen Z and millennials. We're more millennials, I think.
Oh,
yeah, we are. We're more millennials. Gen Z is from 1995. Well, just after 1995. When are you born?
96.
Oh, so you are technically a...
Am I a millennial?
No, you're technically a Gen Z. But
Okay.
you're kind of a millennial.
I'm a little bit of both. You got to get yourself a guy who can do both.
But it's just really
Depends
interesting.
who's asking.
It's just really interesting because now in a world this is the thing that honestly I even thought to myself, do I even need to say it because it's such a thing? But now in a world where we're so connected, we have so many online friends, we have so many followers. However, it's a time where loneliness has picked up massively. A study published in the American Journal of Preventative Medicine last year, so 2019. Surveyed 7,000 19 to 32-year-olds and found that those who spend the most time on social media were twice as likely to report experiencing social isolation. Then you have unbelievable numbers of mental health statistics and links with suicide. This isn't to say that there are no other factors. Of course there are. But some of these that I do want to point out, for example, so the findings I'm about to read out, these were based on data collected from more than 600,000 people by the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, an annual nationwide mental health survey conducted by a branch of the US Department of Health and Human Services. So between 2009 and 2017, rates of depression among kids aged 14 to 17 increased by more than 60%. The increases were nearly as steep among those aged 12 to 13, where it was at 47%, 18 to 21 was 46%, and then the rates roughly doubled among those aged 20 to 21. In 2017, the latest year for which federal data are available, more than 1 in 8 Americans aged 12 to 25 experienced a major depressive episode. And basically, all these things, most of the time, that they can't say 100% this is because of social media, but the biggest phenomenon that we've seen rise with that generation, or the biggest difference between them and us or few generations before us, is that they have been brought up on iPhones, iPads. A lot of people call them iGen instead of Gen Z.
I like that.
Yeah, I know, iGen. It's a good one, isn't it?
Good. You should have tried to claim that as your own.
I know.
Well, it's interesting. So what you were just saying there, I don't know whether social media is a cause or an accelerator of these suicidal tendencies and these, trends in depression. What I will say, and it really breaks my heart, because there are people that you and I both know that have had really severe mental health problems. Unfortunately, somebody, who I was close with, who I know you knew well as well at university, took his own life. And these were people that were so bubbly and so fantastic and had so much to offer the world. And what really breaks my heart is that there were so many red flags, the way that they started to use social media, and it's a real trend I've seen, is that there would start to be erratic posting of statuses again and again, really frequently. And at the time, you don't really put two and two together, but it's such a clear cry for help. And it really broke my heart when that happened to somebody that I knew, because, at the end of the day, what I thought was this must have been a situation where they only saw that as like they were just craving any kind of connection, and people weren't picking up on it, and it was like a last ditch attempt to feel some kind of sense of connectivity with the people that were on paper or on screen their friends. So I think absolutely it can be an accelerator of feelings of isolation, and
100%.
that's why it's fantastic that there's so much work being done on suicide prevention, especially in young men. So much more awareness being brought to the negative aspects of social media.
Yeah.
I don't think ever it should be something. I don't think it's practical to ban it. I don't think it would be beneficial to get rid of any of that. I think it's become such a ingrained part of who we are that it would never go away.
Yeah.
That being said, I think it, like anything else, it really needs to be something that's monitored carefully, and I think it needs to be it needs to be something that enhances life outside of social media rather than just something that people feel trapped in and then aren't able to escape, because that's when those feelings of darkness and depression come.
Well, yes, some people are saying that some journalists and scientists who I was reading studies about, they were talking about how it might not be social media itself that is bad, but a lot of kids, they might have disorders that they're not aware about, for example, ADHD, social anxiety, or depression, and that they might be actually going online as a community place to try and get help, like maybe that person that you mentioned, going online to comment, and that's absolutely horrendous that nothing came of that. But I think a lot of people do go online to try and find communities that they can relate to if they are experiencing that. But because there's no way to filter out the negative stuff that you see, it can be a real just like tangle and web that you can't get out of. Like I read this one study of this girl who, she followed this band on social media because she loved their music. She felt positive and happy when she read their content. And then one day, one of the band members put up a photo of them self-harming. And so she did that. And like that, it's just like, should we have an age limit on social media? Because you can't control. When I was a kid, my mum checked my MSN. I was on the home phone calling people. They could listen to what I was saying. Like they checked the websites that I went on, and there was a way for them to monitor it. But now it's kind of like this black hole that your like 7-8-year-old whatever might be going on. There's no way to filter that. Like should we have an age limit on social media platforms?
So I think Facebook, it used to be that you have to be 12 or something like that. Something even a step further than that, though, which I find fascinating, is that if you're a parent and you have a kid now, you're taking pictures of your baby, you're sharing it with all your friends because that's what people want to see.
Yeah.
At what point does somebody who's had their life documented from the moment they were born inherit their social media? At what point do they take that over? It's so bizarre, and I don't really know, because this isn't something that's happened before. I mean, if you were born in 2009, let's say, when the like button, so you would be 11 years old now. Now, having been documented for 11 years, do you take over? At what point do you get given the smartphone?
Where do you get the password?
Exactly. It's like, it's weird, right? And what you were saying about this police state that we're creating, I remember there was all of this like uproar about the NSA in America and how it came to public knowledge that the government was listening into people's conversations on their phones and that kind of thing. And everybody was outraged. How can you invade our privacy? But at the same time, we're documenting to such incredible detail every single thing that we're doing. It's weird, and I don't really know what the solution is. I don't really know the answer, but it's something that I do think about quite a lot.
Me too. And also there's just weird things like, so my mum has Hinge, and on her dating, will go on there.
Well?
My mum is, I love my mum and I think she's the best, and I just don't think there's anyone out there who's going to be good enough for her. But when we go on her, look at the photos of like the guys, a lot of the time, like not just the men, I'm sure women do this as well, but like they upload photos of them with like their baby or their child who's like 2 or 3. And you're like, isn't there some kind of rule?
Does that do it for her?
But you know what I mean? It's like, it's such a like moral and ethical thing that it's so granular, but it is an invasion of privacy of this person who isn't giving, because they're of such a young age and they're technically a minor, but there aren't laws against uploading photos of minors because you're related to them, so maybe that's fine.
So there's somebody who, do you know Kara Swisher?
No.
Okay, so she's this like phenomenal thinker. She was a journalist. She was really involved with reporting around technology in Silicon Valley for the last, 20 odd years, maybe more.
Okay.
You should check her podcast out. It's called Pivot. She does it with Scott Galloway. Fantastic content.
Okay.
She has a few kids,
Okay.
and sometimes she speaks about them on the podcast, and she says one of them is very happy to be featured and to have her talk about the stories of what he's doing, and the other one really hates it, and she respects that, and she doesn't include him or his name in any of the content that she puts out there. At what age does somebody, at what age should somebody be able to consent or otherwise? Should you have to wait until a certain age? How are you going to stop that? Like, there's so many questions. Again, I think we're far too underqualified to be able to know what the answers are. Again, don't cancel me. But, these are things that it's worth thinking about.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. A few other things that I wanted to talk about is, do you ever get problems with addiction? And do you ever find that you are addicted? Like, I have that. I know there's a name for it. When you think your phone is buzzing and it's not. I get that a lot on a daily basis where I'm like, on my phone, and it's nothing. And I'm like, oh, I'm crazy.
So I do. And I think it's something that is even worse in younger generations. So I was leading a summer camp. Oh God, how old was I? I must have been like 19 years old. Maybe a bit older. Maybe I was 20 years old. And when I was 17, that was the first time I'd led the camp.
Okay.
So the kids that I'd led back then were 3 years younger than me.
Okay.
Now, I'm leading it, and they're the first generation leaders. So they were all, we were technically same level, whatever. The place that we were, this campsite, it didn't have any phone signal. But I remember I would watch these people that were not that much younger than me, would still instinctively, they would take their phone out, look at the screen, unlock it, lock it again.
Yeah.
And obviously nothing had changed because there wasn't any signal. It was physically impossible for them to get any new information. But it was so habitual for them to regularly open, check, back, that it became, like an addiction. It became second nature.
Yeah.
It's something
terrible.
that I catch myself doing as well. Like, you're right, I check my phone when there's nothing there all the time. And maybe it's a boredom thing, maybe it's an addiction, but it's real.
And you do get into such a routine of it. Like, I'm in a bad place right now, Judah. Like, I will go to bed, I check it, then I put it on airplane mode, then I wake up in the night to go to the loo or whatever. First thing I do is check. I can't see anything, and I'm like, phone. Turn it on, like, check it. I'm like, cool, only got a message from like my mom. Turn it back off, go to the loo, come back, check it, and then first thing I do when I wake up is check it. And so I've actually written down like 3 things that I want to try and do from this podcast. I'm going to try and do. So no social media after 8:30 p.m.
Okay.
Fine. No usage on Fridays.
I like that.
Shabbat.
Keeping it kosher, keeping it in the faith.
Keeping it kosher. And not using any social media within the first 2 hours of waking up.
I like that. I think that's good. How long do you think you'll be able to stick to it?
I'm going to just say I'm doing it for a week, and then if I can do that week, then I'm going to carry it on.
I'll tell you what, if you start, I'll from Monday, I'll do it with you. I'll give it a go.
Okay, nice.
And then next time, whatever the topic is you get me on for the next pod, we'll do a little check-in at the beginning and be like, how did we do?
Yes.
Did we fail? How long did we last? All of that.
Yeah, I really want to try and achieve that, because right now it's something that during the first lockdown, like I said, I deleted my Molly Toshiba Instagram account, and it was before I started the Progress Pure one again with that pod. So for about 2 to 3 solid months, no social media except Facebook, which I don't use. And I think it was one of the happiest times of my life. And not because I just wasn't on social media, because I was spending so much time reading, and so much time, like I would wake up and be like, oh my God, my book, like I'm so excited to read. And because I had trained myself to get out of social media, my attention span was so much better. And now when I pick up a book, it's difficult. Like, I have to train myself to not be on my phone so much so that I can just invest in that book and like lose my phone.
So I love reading as well. It's one of the things that brings me the most happiness in life. And anybody that's been to my flat will see like the books and books and books, because I buy books faster than I can read them. It's such a curse.
Yeah.
But it's one of the things that I really do aspire for. And I think, look, social media is so fantastic for so many things, but you're right. One of the main things that it does is it does shorten your attention span. And that's why I think it can only really be a meaningful and productive thing to have as part of your life if it's balanced out with other things and other interests that do require deep concentration. So I'll do the challenge with you, and then we can see how we get on.
Yeah, I think that would be really good. I think it would be good for our mental health, etc., etc. Is there anything else that you have to say? I mean, the other obvious thing is kind of like self-esteem and comparing yourself to other people. what is this? I read somewhere, social media sites make more than half of users feel inadequate, according to a survey of 1,500 people by a disability charity called Scope. And half of 18 to 35-year-olds say it makes them feel unattractive. I totally get that. Like when I go on social media and I see all these like super hot photos of models, I'm like, then you look at your face and you're like, oh, kind of grim. But I do think in a way it's getting better now. Like I said before, the rolls of fat thing is a bit like, okay, we get it. Not everyone's perfect. But actually seeing more photos of normal people going on there with less filters is something which is moving in the right direction and making me not feel as bad about that kind of thing. But those filters are fucked up.
Yeah, so
I can't believe we've even spoken about filters.
Again, would it be a podcast if I didn't shout out the Joe Rogan one for a second? That's for the long-term listeners.
Yeah.
But one of the things that he shared was, so his daughter had used this like face editing app and had basically completely morphed face. So she's, I don't know how old she is, but she's young, like what, around 10, something like that.
Okay.
She'd basically been able to completely morph her face to make it look like she was an adult and completely change her appearance. And then he did the same thing with a photo of himself and made himself look like a really attractive woman.
Yeah.
It's crazy because these filters, they completely distort reality. And I think that's a separate issue to social media in of itself. That's just basically, it's fraud.
Yeah.
It's manipulating yourself to portray yourself as something that you're not. It's catfishing. It's terrible for self-esteem.
But the way you say it makes it sound like that person is doing it intentionally. Like I think that with so much pressure of society to look a certain way, people do it because they desperately want to try and be a different version of themselves. And unfortunately it can lead into being a catfish, being this and being that, and like not authentic. But I think that people come at it of the angle of, I don't feel good enough.
Mm-hmm. Look, I guess there's always going to be something, and I think that that's not something new to social media. I think if you look at magazines and if you look at television, there was always standards that people held themselves to that were completely unattainable because the people that they're looking at don't exist.
True.
There's airbrushing, there's good lighting, all of this stuff. Social media absolutely concentrates and makes that so much more visible. But I don't think that's a unique challenge to social media.
True. Like in Victorian times, the women would ask the painters to paint them, you know, extra white with like a really receding hairline because that was the most.
That. So hot.
Always gets you going.
Yeah.
Massively receding hairline. Isn't that mad? They thought that was so attractive. Like for it, they would pluck it.
It so is. Like it does it for me.
All the way back here. And like really white, you know, and all of this stuff. And
like with the collars as well.
Yeah, the collars and the tiny waist and the long fingers.
It's hilarious. And then like if you fast forward, 200 years and you've got these magazines where Victoria's Secret or whatever, and it's like, how can we make the people that we're showing look as close to Barbie dolls as possible?
Yeah.
That's not real. That's taking our animal brain and looking at, well, what is it that we're genetically designed to desire and enhancing it to the point where it's completely unrecognizable.
But not just genetically designed to decide, like to take that and then also throw, this is kind of going into the beauty myth, like to throw in all of the elements that commercial industries want you to think is beautiful so that you end up spending more money to look like that. And filters play into that. But then the filters thing, all the filters do is just make you look like a version of Kylie Jenner because that right now is the thing that's like the most beautiful.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting.
Crazy.
It's interesting.
I would love for Instagram to do a hashtag no filter day. Like one day every year, like 1st of Jan. Mm-hmm. No, but like everyone for Instagram to do it. Start it. Like, Mark Zuckerberg or whoever is listening, if you could do like 1st of Jan, no filter.
Oh, I don't think you want to do it on 1st of Jan because everybody's going to be disgustingly hungover, including you because it's your birthday the day before.
So true.
So absolutely,
true.
I won't be doing my no filters on 1st of January. Maybe like 4th or 5th when we've recovered. You know, we've sweated out
maybe
the hangover.
Midsummer, so
Midsummer, you got the tan, you got the glow. You don't need a filter because it's golden hour every day.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, we're going to find the perfect natural filter, and like this is just how I look all the time.
Hashtag no filter.
Hashtag no filter, but insane sunlight and like 2 weeks of holiday, and I've also got my summer bod. And like this is lasting for 30 minutes of like me being perfect, and then I can go back to doing everything that I've done the rest of the year.
Literally, I remember when that filter, not a filter, the hashtag. What's that hashtag that's like woke up like this or like no makeup? You just have people
felt cute might delete later.
I've done
so cute.
I've taken so many like filtered photos of myself and be like, that's so cute, and then looked at it and be like, that is so lame that I would
might
post
delete,
that.
like probably will delete.
Well, definitely will delete.
I'll tell you something just
Delete.
before we wrap up though. Something that I saw during lockdown was, which I actually didn't get, and I asked people and nobody explained it to me, but then I got my light bulb moment. Did you ever see there was this thing where it was like hashtag until tomorrow, and people would post these like really grim photos of themselves for a little bit, and it was like, oh, hashtag until tomorrow. So maybe I'm getting it wrong. I think that was what the hashtag was.
Okay.
But that was kind of cool because it was like, okay, I'm going to put this is me at my worst up, and I'm going to leave it on for a day.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so people do like...
Did they actually look ugly?
Yeah, well, it was like, so there was somebody who posted like, I don't know, a picture of themselves with like a stocking over their head and like spinning around on their chair in the office, for example.
Jokes.
Yeah, so jokes. So nice.
So nice.
And, you know, whatever. It was like, it wasn't a great photo compared to all of the other ones that they usually put out. And then they deleted it. But this was something everybody was doing. I'm surprised you didn't see it.
Maybe it was my no social media phase.
Shabbos. But yeah, so maybe we bring it back.
But what is it? You said you discovered this recently.
No, so I remember during lockdown, I saw it that everybody was posting this like grim photo of themselves, and they would leave it on with the caption, you know, hashtag until tomorrow, and then they deleted it the day afterwards. And it was like a little moment of, this is the real me, but only for 24 hours.
Oh, I quite like that. Only for 24 hours.
See if I can find...
yeah.
I'm going to look up the hashtag just before we drop off, because I need to have my dinner soon.
That's fine. There's also a social media tag that I don't get, but I've always wanted. I kind of love it, but I don't feel like I can use it. It's like, don't at me. Don't at me. I'm like, because there are so many scenarios where I've been in where like I think like my life is so great right now. Like I'm eating, the highlight when I say my life is so great right now is me eating a bowl of popcorn and watching The Sopranos.
With balsamic I saw, like what is that?
Balsamic, olive oil, salt, my fave. And like times I feel like those are the right moments where I could take a photo and I go, don't at me. But then like, because it sounds right. But then also like, what? What does that even mean?
It means nothing.
It means nothing.
It's an empty
People
statement.
don't at me like pestering me about my popcorn life. Like, so what am I saying?
I'm going to start atting you all the time now.
Don't at me, bro. Wait, what's another one? What are some other social media? Or to be honest, I love the phenomenon of just like hashtagging everything. Like hashtag like health, or like hashtag like detox. Like even though it's such bullshit, like hashtag shoes, hashtag walking.
Oh, it's so funny. Yeah, like the most ridiculous. You can get some that are like really long hashtags that nobody else is ever going to do that hashtag.
Yeah, I know.
Like, I guess the idea of the hashtag is if it's okay, hashtag sunsets, and I'm going to click on it. I'm going to see loads of other people's sunsets if that's what I'm into.
Yeah.
But, you know,
I would find that so weird,
you know what
if
I mean?
you came here and you were just scrolling through hashtag sunset.
Oh, did you not see what I was doing before we started recording?
Jokes. Okay.
Lots
Lots of
of fun.
fun. Okay, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you, Judah.
Thank you for having me, Tesh. Always a good time.